is the email filing, installation, and configuration video. It is for the client, and it's part 2. Part 1 kind of focused on the core features of the AutoBulk filer and the local marker. This will look into some of the add-on features such as quick file and file to eDOCS and the email filing assistant in a little more depth, as well as how to configure things to work with the Exchange Connector and Server Marker Manager. There was a video created on how to set up things like the Exchange Connector and the Server Marker Manager, so look for that if you have questions. So we will be picking up where we left off in the other video with our client here. I've moved over a few new things. There's going to be the email filing config tool, which we'll need to use to configure things to work properly. And there is also going to be another one I need to drag over, which is in the client installations folder. There is a folder Outlook Add-ins. Depending on the version of Office you are using, you will want to grab the appropriate ones. I'm using a 32-bit version of Office 2013. So I will copy that over here. Okay. So inside here you'll see there's actually 3 options. There's the clear billing information add-in, the file to eDOCS, and the quick file, and then there is an Outlook email filing Outlook integration exe, which creates kind of a nice GUI interface to enable some of these options for you. Just to briefly talk about what these do, the clear billing information add-in, when you take an email and you forward it, if the email happens to have this billing information filled in that says bulk filed, it will remove that when you forward it, so that way a forwarded email will get saved again by a second recipient. So that's simply put what that add-in does. File to eDOCS enables a right-click context menu for being able to save and monitor folders, save emails, and monitor folders through the Outlook interface. And quick file is a drop-down menu that allows people to quickly save emails into the DM system. So we'll install all 3 of these. In fact, we'll use this email filing Outlook integration piece. Each one of these does come with its own separate MSI and exe, so what this utility is really doing is installing these for us. Reads the work path for us, which is nice. We'll use a custom interface, or custom selection, excuse me. So we do want to install quick file ribbon. We want to install subject filing, which ties into that. We talked about that a little bit in the last video. We'll talk about it more here. We'll install the file to eDOCS add-in, the mark folder now, which ties into the file to eDOCS add-in, and that last one is the reset file status, which we talked about. Just to let you know, some of these are add-ins. The quick file add-in, the file to eDOCS add-in, and the billing information add-in, as I mentioned, are listed here. The other 2 features, which are the mark now and the subject filing, need to be enabled with registry keys. This utility will create those keys for us. Alternatively, I don't know. Well, I believe I knew what the registry key was, but we'll have to take a look at it. It can be set manually. We'll take a look at what that registry key is in a moment and determine there. And it is still chugging along here. You do need to have the VSTO runtime installed. If you don't have it installed, it will install it for you. You can alternatively install this prior to installing these add-ins. In fact, if you run into any issues with this, sometimes it can be easier to install it the Office 2010 runtime or distributable before you install the add-ins. But I purposely did this to show you guys that it will prompt you. Okay, and we're finished. And we do need to restart the machine. Okay. Okay, the client machine is now finished rebooting, having some issues with my normal VM software, so I'm using something a little different here, but as you can see, it's resuming on the reboot. I'm going to just come in here and click the install button and let it finish what it needs to do. And while it's doing this, I wanted to show you, I did find the location in local machine, HKey local machine, software, WOW6432. This is a mistype. It should not be in there twice. And in fact, if it's a 32-bit OS, this won't be here at all. IntelliGo email filing. Here are the registry keys to enable quick file, subject filing, file to eDOCS in the marked selected folder. Okay, that is an interesting error message. I don't know why that's coming up. Okay, I'm not sure why that occurred. Let's take a look at a few things. It did not install. So here we do see the 2010 runtime, but it did not install any of the add-ins. They're not listed here. Well, let's try doing this. Try doing this manually, each one at a time. And hopefully it'll be a very quick install. Usually is. Okay. This should also be a quick install. Perhaps not. Okay. And finally, quick file. Verify the work path is correct. It is. Use the default install location, and we'll wait for this to install. Okay, it's finished installing. I don't know what was the issue with using the exe. I'll have to do some further investigating on that. But we now have all three components installed. And on that note, we're going to restart the client machine again. Okay. Client has been restarted. Go into the control panel and verify the installation. Okay, and you'll see the clear billing information, file to eDOCS, and quick file are now all listed there. Close that. We will want to come up though and enable the feature for the file for the mark now. That is a handy feature. Apologize. In this VM I don't have quite as much mouse control as I do under my other system. And it won't let me copy and paste in here apparently. So I will have to remember it. Enable mark selected folder. Okay. And as you can see, this enable subject filing we have set already, and the enable file to eDOCS and the enable quick file are enabled by default if you have the add-ins installed, so we do not need to do that. Let's just try one more time and see if I can get this to connect. Okay, so now that we've got those registry keys and add-ins in place, we need to configure them to work properly. Okay, sorry for the switch up here. I was having trouble getting stuff controlled in the other on my other view. So here we are. We've got all of our add-ins installed. We've got the registry keys in place. Now what we need to do is didn't mean to do that. What we need to do is install the configuration tool. Email filing config tool. Takes just a moment to install. This can be installed on any machine. You can install this on the server or a client machine, as long as the machine has access to be able to make a connection to the SQL server. Okay, so the installation is finished. In fact, I said it needs to be able to make a connection to the SQL server. I meant the DM server, because we will be logging in. You will need to be a doc supervisor to do so. And at the top is the configuration. It's a little different for 4.3.1. It's nice, but at the top you pick the profile form you wish to modify, and we're using LonProf. If you have multiple forms, you may need to do this for each form. And at the top, ID column selected for email filing assistant and for quick file. This is hard to explain without showing you, but essentially this is the pieces of metadata that will be made available for the user to see when they use the quick file feature. The standard is usually client and matter. Doc type can be added as well, so we'll just do that. And up here you can see show columns configured in the work path, and you can change that work path if you need to. Show all columns available. These are the two options that you have. And my resolution's making it hard, so yeah, then I can click OK down there. The next feature is show history in the email filing assistant. When we show you the email filing assistant, that might make a little more sense, and the max rows is the max number of things it'll show you in that history. Basically, like I say, easier to show than describe, but typically leave that checked by default, and the max rows of 5 can be adjusted, but the default at 5 is normally used. Enable foldering and email filing assistant and thread filing. You can enable that if you want to. Won't get into the details of how all that works, but this is how you can enable that if that's what you choose to use. Now to quick file. The display format is the format in which users will see the data. So we are going to add, again, client and matter. This is the client ID and the matter ID. This is likely the client full name and the matter full name. I don't know why these names aren't showing quite right here. It's a little fun quirk with the database sometimes. And as you can see, this is the display that they'll see, because the client is default and the matter is default. So for document number 3, this is the information that they would see. In fact, we can add that information as well. Do this again, and of course the document type was default. So kind of a weird looking thing there, but this is what they'll see, and again, this will make more sense in just a moment if you're not familiar with quick file. Here's where you can set the options for delete. You can enable deleting and have it off by default. You can enable deleting and have it on by default. You can remember their last selection and have it on or off by default, or you can always delete. I like to choose no delete, but of course different sites have different configurations. If you're going to be using foldering with the quick file, you can certainly do so. Again, you can select these things here. And some of this will make more sense once I show it to you. Again, this is more about showing you how to configure things than how to use it, and this is much simpler to configure than it used to be. Anyone who is familiar with the old 4.3 or earlier interface will appreciate how nice this has become. And if you'd like, you can change your library. We only have one library here, but you can on the fly. You don't have to log out. You can just change your library and select a different library. So we're going to save these settings. Yes. The settings have been saved, so I can exit out of here. Minimize this. Okay, now that we've got quick file configured, and in fact I did forget to go through and do thread and subject filing. We'll do that in a moment, but I wanted to show you quick file and file the eDOCS first. So as you can see, we now have a button over here that says quick file. This is the quick file add-in. Also, we will come over here and you'll see if I right click on a folder, I have an option to file to eDOCS DM. It's grayed out right now because the auto bulk filer is not in memory. Once the auto bulk filer is in memory, though, that option will not be grayed out, and we will be able to right-click on a folder and choose File to eDOCS. And this creates a nice way for users to be able to monitor folders. In this case, as I said, we can right-click on that folder, choose File to eDOCS, and we will see a email filing job creation screen come up. Nope. Have an option from the previous session to choose what user I run as, so it's going to ask me every time. And if we give it just a moment, we're going to see this is going a little slower than it normally does, probably because I already have this one on the list and it's trying to look through and rectify that, so it's going to notify me here in a moment. Perhaps not. Let's pick one I have never done before, though, just to show you. There we go. Now you'll see here we can come through here. I will have to select some profiles. My machine does not have all the resources in the world, so I apologize if it takes a moment. Okay, and so that's how you can use the File to eDOCS add-in inside of the Outlook menu. So rather than having to come into the bulk filer, you can right-click on a folder and it'll just kind of automatically bring the bulk filer up and immediately add to that folder. So rather than having to come in here and right-click, add Outlook folder, navigate to where you want to go, if the user's in Outlook, they're looking at the folder, they can just right-click and go. You can also use this on individual emails. I can just right-click this email here, File to eDOCS DM, next, and now that it's kind of been doing it a few times, it should be going much faster. Okay. Finish, and that email just got saved to DM, and you can see there's a bulked category on it now. So that is how the File to eDOCS add-in works. It doesn't require much configuration at all. It's pretty much install it and use it. The quick file, we did some configuration, and just to show you how all that works, the first time I use quick file, nothing's here because we haven't used it yet other than other, so we'll choose other. Now these three fields here, client, matter, and doc type, those are the fields I chose at the top. In fact, I probably should have left this open to show you. So these three here, client, matter, and type ID, which is the doc type ID, document type, that is why these three things are showing here. Recent, if I had done this before, it would be showing me recent. Options, there's an option you can enable in the registry to enable suggestions. Enable suggestion right here, IntelliGo quick file, and it will show recent list, also sending address. So basically it's a little misleading here, or misworded there to me anyway, but basically I'll add like a second box here that has suggestions based on what it thinks that you might want to use as metadata. Something you can enable there if you'd prefer. So we're going to come in here and choose our default client, default matter, and default document type. If I wanted to add it to a DM folder, I certainly could. In fact, let's do that just to say we did. We'll add it to the good old OTEF folder. I'm not going to add any security to this, but I certainly could if I wanted to. In fact, there's not a lot of people in my environment to add security for, but here's how you could do that. Apply defaults if you want. If you've got like profile default set, you can hit that and it'll apply your profile defaults. And if you hit file, this now shows, see here how the billing information filled in bulk filing, and this now says bulked in the category. And if I come to quick file, you'll notice that this is showing, and it's a little cut off unfortunately, but you'll notice it says default, default, default. Well, that is because of this section down here. And see, it changed it in there for us. It actually put the stuff in the old format, but down here where this display format is, I added client, matter, and doc type, and that is what it is showing us here in Outlook. It is showing us the client, the matter, and the doc type. All of them happen to be default, so it's a little misleading. And you'll notice it also has, and it's cut off here, but it's showing the folder name, and if it was all the way over, you'd see the folder number as well. And that is because of what I have down here. where I have the doc name, which in this case is a folder name, so the folder is a document, and the doc number. So that is how those fields work, and just briefly how QuickFile works as well. Now, in the realm of QuickFile, there is another option that can be enabled if you choose to add QuickFile to where you can drag and drop emails to a dynamic view node, and rather than going through the normal save to DM process of dragging to a dynamic view node, it will use email filing to save it to the DM system. And in order to enable that feature, there is a registry key that needs to be set. And that registry key is called Save to Email Filing. It is actually a DM registry key. It will be put under the local machine software. If it's a 64-bit OS, you'll use the WOW6432 node. Hummingbird email integration 1.5 settings. If you remember the other videos, we set this use message ID. Same place you would set that value, you will want to create this save to email filing and set it to 1 if you choose to use email filing with dynamic views. Again, completely optional, but that's how you would enable that with that key right there. And in fact, this is a little outdated. You'll want to set this to 2. And I apologize, the newer guide has that in there, but that value should be set to 2, not 1. So, as you can see, we've used the file to eDOCS to save this email to DM, and we've used QuickFile to save this email to DM. If I were to forward this email to myself, which I unfortunately can't do right now, having some Exchange trouble, but this bulk filing information where it says bulk file, this would get stripped out, and the email when I received it would be blank inside of here, and that is because of that third add-in, that clear billing information add-in. Subject filing, if you choose to use that, can be configured accordingly. Again, you'll pick the display format you wish. We'll go with a similar one. And these I tend to leave alone, and you can change this if you like. You can choose to insert the cursor before the tag or after the tag, because the tag goes in the subject line for those of you familiar with subject filing. And so you can have the cursor automatically go to the beginning or the end. If you want to enable foldering for subject filing, you can certainly do that as well. It works similar to how QuickFile works. We'll just save this real quick so I can briefly just give a demonstration on how this looks when I go to create a new email. The insert tag will be here. Again, much like QuickFile, this actually uses the same add-in that QuickFile uses, so QuickFile doesn't need to be installed for this to work. I can create other. And because I've added this stuff, I would need to relaunch Outlook. Save it, didn't I? I think I did. Okay. Now on my insert tag, okay, you'll see client matter and doc type, and that's because I added those up here. So that's what that does. So I can come in and create a tag. And again, it's going to be all defaults. Well, this one I could choose something different, and I will just to mix it up a little. Alright, and then I'll insert that tag. And you can see what it does here. Inserts that tag. And now if I was to come up to insert tag, it remembers it, and this was controlled to by that max number of rows setting as well. Don't need to save that. That's just briefly what subject filing looks like and how you can configure it through the email filing configuration tool. Lastly, we will talk about the, and I'll close out everything, email filing assistant. As you may recall from the first video, that it was something that was an option when you installed. Just want to make sure DM and everything is out of memory completely. But installing it does not finish the process of using it. If you wish to use it, there is a file that gets installed that you need to run. It's an exe, and it should be here in program files. If you're on a 64-bit, it'd be program files x86. And yep, open text, email filing. And this executable add email filing assistant, it will modify the appropriate files and the documentation can tell you specifically which files get modified and how they're modified. But just to kind of show you briefly what that does when working inside of a document like this. Nobody cares. Okay, see this email filing assistant, and it is not displaying much because I don't have it configured. But that's what the email filing assistant does, and in theory what it'll do once it starts populating some things, it'll show you your mail history, your thread history, and you can set it to provide suggestions as well. It is not as commonly used a feature as some of the others like the quick file or the file to eDOCS. So that is how to use the Outlook add-ins for email filing. The last thing I want to show you is the configuration when using server-side components. On the first video we talked about a registry key called useServerConfig that controlled where the link config file and the DAT files were created, excuse me. And by setting that to 1, we said let's put all the files on the work path. By setting it to 2, we're going to do the same thing. Say let's put all the stuff on the work path, but we're also going to tell it to use the server-side components as well. I'm going to launch the marker here just to try to see if it creates this. You know what, it's not going to, so I'm just going to manually do it. This is DM mark. And the registry value is useServerConfig. And for the marker, it only has valid values of 0 or 2. And in the documentation, you can do a quick search on useServerConfig, and you will see many instances of it and where its values are and what's acceptable. Okay. Now that I've made those changes, I'm going to relaunch the bulk filer. And the reason I'm doing that is to update the link config on my server and to tell the server components to now take over. So rather than having to come in here and choosing right-click File Now, it should have the Exchange connector automatically do that. It can take some time, but let's test this out real quick. I'll take a test email here. And drag it into my monitored folder, which is taking a moment to display. Okay, so we'll just drag it into that folder there. I don't think this one had already been filed, so we'll just add the billing information column, though I like to do that as an administrator when kind of setting things up or troubleshooting. It's nice, handy piece of information. Okay, so now that it's in there, and the Exchange connector is set to rescan every 15 minutes, and in production that is good. For us, that might be too long, so we're going to change that to 1 and we'll restart the service. And you can see right away, 12:54 at this time, which is what the time the machine thinks it is. It scanned 1007 and it processed that email. If we come over to the client, we'll see it shows bulked. Everything's working well. Let's come over here and doesn't look like it's quite gotten out of the work path yet. Nope, sitting right here, so we're waiting on it to go get saved to DM, and then we'll let the marker do its job, and the process will be complete. And I'm going to change the marker to 1 minute just so this process is not as long as it could be. All right, we can see that document 9 was created in the log. The client, you notice, is still showing bulk because the server marker manager hasn't run against it quite yet. Maybe I need to restart that again just to be on the safe side. Okay, and due to some limitations on, I don't know that I'm going to be able to refresh the log here. Doesn't look like it's going to give me that option. Interesting. Okay, yep. Auto hiding the taskbar worked here, and we can refresh the log. And we'll see it's scanned. Well, I tried to scan. It did not like what it found. And what I'm going to do here is enable the debug log. In fact, I'm just looking here to see. It says a valid user cannot be found. Login name. Welcome to email. It does not seem to have a primary SMTP in here for me. This is not a problem with email filing. This is more an issue to do with my Exchange service, so I apologize for this. Not sure what I did wrong there, but there is a simple workaround. Somewhere, SQL Server is the one I want. Oop. So essentially what's happening here is that my Exchange connector is not configured quite properly, unfortunately, and so this file is not getting built properly. And the workaround here is I can come into the people table to this section where it says email address and update it. Update docsadm.people. Set email address equal to okay. Let's delete this file. And let's restart this. And now you'll see primary SMTP is populated. And now it looks like it found it because of that. Maybe. And okay, it marked that time. Yeah, the problem was I did not have things set right in my Exchange connector, and so I had to correct that and then restart the marker and rescan everything, because after it scanned it once and it failed, it would have eventually picked it up with the extended scan, but not with the not by the auto marker. So it is working. Just had to work around a bit of a problem I have with my Exchange connector, unfortunately. It might have helped if I put this in here as well. So that is the video on how to use the client-side stuff, part 2, the Outlook add-ins, and how to configure things for server-side usage. If you have any questions about anything in this video, please feel free to post a comment and we will do our best to reply.